From an incredible body transformation to his return to the UFC, Jon Jones has shocked his fans several times. Here are some of the most shocking Jon Jones moments, starting with his incredible body transformation. Now, we all know that Jon Jones has been known for his athletic physique for the longest time in his career. That was kind of his brand. But when he came out with his new body, it shocked the whole world. You don't need to have a lot of weight when you're competing in the division that he was. But then for his return after so many years, he wanted to up his game and his division. And for that, he needed to pack on a few pounds of muscle. It took him a year to get that body, but that year was full of intense training. And honestly, it looks so worth it. The New York native's new weight is going to shock you. Ready to hear it? He's now a whopping 255 pounds. Yep, an absolute unit. We all know that he was out of the public eye for over 3 years, but now we know what he had been doing all that time.
He's not under the chin.
And Gon's head is not really in there.
Certainly applying pressure, though, and keeping his head bent down makes it difficult to breathe. He's making him carry his weight.
Yes.
But who's behind his huge transformation? Surely there has to be someone who helped him out during this time, right? Well, the person who Jones can thank for this huge transformation is strength coach and 2010 Mr. Olympia strongest bodybuilder Stan Efferding. He was the one who helped Jones get stronger on some of the most important exercises. And if you're wondering what these magic exercises are that are responsible for Jon Jones becoming one of the big boys in the UFC, it's bench press, deadlift, and squats, according to Jones himself. Here's what else he said about his transformation. After he made his iconic return, which I will talk about in just a moment, fans finally got to see all the work he had put into building his body over the past few years. He talked about a lot of things, including the kind of exercises that helped him the most, and how much he could lift now, along with how he felt about the whole experience. Talking about how much he could lift by the end of his training, he said that by the time he was leaving training camp, he could bench press over 143 kilograms. Now, that's insane. But if you think that's a lot, let me tell you how much he said he was able to deadlift and squat. According to the MMA fighter, he can now deadlift over 640 pounds and squat a whopping 520 pounds. But it wasn't all about lifting a huge amount of weight for him. He said that towards the end of training, he was focusing less on the big numbers and more on the explosiveness of his movements and his muscle endurance. But he wasn't just spending a lot of time in the gym. As you all know, when you're lifting and working out that much, you need fuel for the body to grow. So for as long as he was training, he was eating over 4,500 calories a day. As insane as that sounds, it makes sense when you look at how big this man has gotten. But if you think that's shocking, let me tell you about his return to UFC. Now, this shouldn't have been shocking to fans, because obviously he wasn't just going to retire in his prime, right? But it still came as a pleasant shock when he made his return to the UFC. The 35-year-old has been one of the most prominent people in the sport, with over 26 UFC wins under his belt. As I said before, he had been out of the public eye for a while, for over 3 years, with little to no updates about what he had been doing or if he was going to come back or not. But then, out of nowhere, it was announced that the Icon was making a return to the sport after putting on a hell of a lot of muscle mass and becoming so much stronger. Why? Because he had to compete for the heavyweight title. The most shocking part wasn't even how different he looked, but his switch from light heavyweight to heavyweight. And although it makes a lot more sense given his body transformation, it still came as a pleasant shock to all of his fans. You see, he was doing pretty well in the lightweight division, but it looks like he really wanted to challenge himself. Speaking to reporters before the fight, he said that he was very confident in himself taking on this new challenge and was actually excited for it too. "I feel awesome," he said just 2 days before the fight, adding that he hoped to make it look like an easy fight for him. him. But what about his debut fight after 3 years? Well, let me tell you guys about his fight with Ciryl Gane. Okay, so although Ciryl is one of the most fierce fighters in UFC, no one was hyped about this fight because of him. Why? Because Jones was the star of the show, especially after his body transformation. And not to mention, this was going to be his first fight in over 3 years. And that too in a whole different division. So the hype was on. People weren't sure what to expect of Jones. There were his fans who were sure that this was going to be one of the most iconic moments in UFC history, and then there were other people who thought just because he put on some muscle mass didn't mean he was going to do well in the heavyweight division. Well, luckily for fans of Jon Jones, he gave us one of the best finishes in the history of the sport, making this fight legendary and making sure that he came back with a bang. And the best part about the whole thing, he didn't even need a lot of time to absolutely finish his opponent. Despite Ciryl being the interim champion, just less than 2 minutes into the game, Jones was the winner after he put a guillotine choke on Gane that totally overwhelmed the French fighter. Now, just because the fight didn't go on for a long time doesn't mean it lacked drama. Jones ducked to avoid a strike, got behind Gane, and dragged the Frenchman to the ground, where he got on top and finished his opponent, snatching his first victory in over 3 years. This fight did a lot of good, but the best probably was getting Jones the GOAT title. Now, this one is highly subjective, but after I explain a bit, I bet all of you will agree with me that Jon Jones is slowly earning the title of the GOAT, if he hasn't done that already. I mean, the way he fought his first fight in 3 years in a totally new division and won against one of the most fierce fighters in said division speaks volumes about his abilities as a fighter. Won't you agree? And not to mention, now has the heavyweight title under his belt as well, along with the other 15 title fights that he has competed in and won. So when you look at his track record, it's pretty clear that this man is a legend, and there's nothing he can't do once he sets his mind to it. One of the most important things that make a fighter the GOAT, according to fans, is discipline. And looking at the way he transformed his body, we think Jones has that one in the bag already. The only thing left for him to do to become the GOAT in everyone's eyes is win a fight against Stipe Miocic, according to Jones himself. He talked about how he hopes the fighter has been training because he has his eyes on him. Why? Well, because Jones thinks Miocic is the GOAT, and he wants that title for himself. And that was all about some of the most shocking Jon Jones moments.